When Casey and Whitehouse reached the office, they found Stephen, Corpse and Jane standing around Cars, who was in a major panic. "What will the chairman say when he finds out?" Cars whimpered sadly. "I'll get the sack for this, you know that." "What's wrong, Cars? What's happened?" asked Whitehouse. "Someone broke into the clubroom and not only took the jewel we found earlier, but the deed to the railway. Without it, we no longer own it." "Well, it couldn't have gone far. Look, you and Corpse continue on the line while us four search the area," suggested Jane. Everyone agreed and the search was on. Casey took Lady Grange on the line to the old mine, while Whitehouse searched the station yards. Jane searched the clubroom, and Stephen was meant to check over the office. But Stephen had slipped away into the darkness, and he made his way over back to the MCS. The time for the attack had come, and soon he would rule all around him. "The time has come," he announced as he rushed through the gates of the MCS. He gazed at his new soldiers who had been brainwashed since he was gone. "Time to attack. Prepared for battle," he ordered. The soldiers obeyed and went to arrange themselves at the large gathering in the courtyards. By now, the whole staff of the MCS was under the power of the jewel and were all lined up in 4 sections in front of the wooden shed. Stephen walked grandly down the middle section, admiring his new brainwashed army. "Your seat of authority awaits you." Stephen looked up to see his grandfather's spirit standing proudly next to a large wooden throne. "Come, my child, and present yourself as ruler of your army," it said grandly. "All hail Stephen!" chanted the members. "Long live Stephen!" "What the hell's going on here?" an angry voice bellowed through the courtyard. Stephen stood up from his seat and glared. Mr. Bernard stood at the doorway of the club's exit, his face red as a beetroot. "I thought I made myself clear that if you ever set foot on this turf again, I would have you crushed in the car compactor," he growled as he slowly walked towards the front. "And what are you lot doing?" Bernard yelled as he turned to the workers. "Standing there cheering for him? I'll have your heads for this." He pointed his walking cane at Stephen. "Seize him!" Bernard ordered. Nobody moved. "Didn't you hear me, you idiots? I said seize him!" "No matter how much you order them, Bernard, they won't listen." Stephen grinned sinisterly. "Guards, seize him." Quick as lightning, Grinder and Gears turned on Bernard and clamped him in chains from some old winter tires. "You'll pay for this, you traitor!" growled Bernard. "Not as much as the rudeness you gave me," Stephen replied as he took away Bernard's hat and cane. "They quite suit me, don't you think?" he said as he did a few catwalk poses. "Take him away to the impound cage, and I'll deal with you later, Bernard." Bernard swore and cursed as he was forced away from the yards. Stephen laughed evilly. "Now to carry out the attack. Here are my orders." All the workers stood to attention. "We are going to take over this miserable land and rule it as our own, starting with your enemy, the Model Engineer Society. Take any members prisoner and lock them with Bernard in the impound cages. Do whatever it takes to make them cooperate. Carry on!" We obey! Long live Stephen! Chorused the workers, as one by one they made their way over to the grounds of the railway. Some took the main entrance, while others took different routes. "You'll be able to see the action here," the spirit informed Stephen, as it pointed him to a monitor on the wall. A worker switched it on, to which a clear CCTV footage of the railway appeared. They could see the army splitting up and roaming the area. Cars and Corpse had only got a few meters before they were nearly finished the extension. As Cars was getting another piece of rail, he saw what looked like a lump of black sludge lying in the driveway. "What's this?" he said, as he went over to examine the substance. Corpse walked up. "What have you got there?" he asked. "I don't know, but it looks familiar," Cars said. He dipped his finger into the blob. It stuck to it like glue and didn't let go. "What the?" Cars exclaimed as he tried to free his hand. It had now been covered in the stuff. Corpse tried to help when the blob suddenly snapped free from Cars' hand, sending the two stumbling back. "What was that stuff?" Corpse demanded, once he got himself together. "Tar," a voice said. The two looked over to see 2 MCS workers appearing from the shadows. Both were carrying what looked like water guns, with blobs of black tar oozing from the nozzle. "Quick, run!" yelled Cars, and turned to run. But his feet wouldn't move. He and Corpse looked down and realized that 2 more blobs of tar had been placed behind them when they stumbled back. Now their feet were stuck fast. The 2 workers sniggered as they cable-tied the 2 boys' arms together. 2 down, 3 to go, a worker said, as he and his teammate carried their catch back to base. Jane was looking through all the drawers and cupboards of the clubroom. The deed had to be in one of them, but where? After searching for the 5th time, Jane decided it wasn't there. Oh, dear. Cars, Jane here. No luck in the club room, so I'm going to try the workshops, all right? She said into her walkie-talkie. There was no reply. Cars, you there? She said again. Only the sound of the radio static came through. Jane jumped in shock as a loud knocking came from the window. Who is it? She asked.
It's all right, Jane. It's only me, Cars,
replied a voice.
I found the deed. It was in my pocket the whole time.
It didn't sound like Cars's voice, but Jane was too annoyed to notice this as she headed out the door. Do you mean to say, she began, but she was cut short when a car cover was thrown on top of her, while 3 MCS workers restrained her. Another worker came up behind Jane and knocked her unconscious. They made the cover into a sack and used it, carried Jane like a sack of potatoes, to join the others at base. Whitehouse searched the station yards with Puffer, moving backwards and forwards along the line to see if the deed had been blown into a hedge or tree. The station lamps helped light up a bit of the line, but Whitehouse had his torch and Puffer's headlamp, and he shone it around the yards, trying to see if the deed was anywhere about. But it wasn't. I might as well go and see if Casey's had any luck, he thought to himself as he moved off in the direction of the forest. I must also speak to him here about his behaviour again. He's been acting really odd since Stephen got here. He had just made it to the footbridge when everything happened at once. A large tyre swung out from the other side of the bridge, struck Whitehouse with a great force that had sent him flying off his driving truck. He flew through the air and landed a few metres away on the turntable. Whitehouse got up and looked around to see what was going on. Then he caught a glimpse of 2 MCS workers darting out from the trees behind him. Before Whitehouse could move, the workers ran to each end of the table and grabbed the turning bars. They began spinning the table faster and faster. They spun it so fast that Whitehouse nearly lost his balance. Then they stopped spinning and let the table turn freely. This gave them enough time to grab some small tires and began throwing them at Whitehouse like a game of hoopla. One by one, the tires were stacked on top of Whitehouse, keeping him in a fixed position. As the turntable finally stopped spinning, the neat stack of tires that Whitehouse become fell on his side. The 2 workers took hold of each end of him and carried him back to base. Another member had gotten hold of Puffer and had loaded him onto a trailer, which he too took up to the courtyards. Stephen cackled with laughter as he watched everything from the monitor. All captured, and everything is now in my possession. Soon I'll rip up that line and make way for my new empire. Report update, sir, Grinder announced. Report, soldier, Stephen replied. Everyone taken prisoner? Affirmative, sir. We round up all 4 of them. Excellent. I'll come down later on to gloat at them. I have an offer they can't refuse for their life's sake. Now, I want you to... Stephen paused. How many did you capture? All 4 of them, sir, Gears replied. 3 boys and a girl. Hearing this, Stephen went red with rage. You idiots, he bellowed. There's still 1 real buff out there. Find him and bring him here. Move! He kicked Grinder to the ground, to which he scampered off to round up the troops. Yes, sir. Right away, sir, he yelped. Calm yourself, my boy, the spirit said soothingly, as Stephen sat back down on his chair. Don't let that boy put you off your victory. Why don't you go and witness your catch for the night? I might as well, Stephen replied, as he got back to his feet. If there's any updates, please inform me at once. And he made his way to the impound cages to see what his men had caught. The Motorcar Society workers searched the whole club, but there was no sign of Casey anywhere. They didn't know about the old mine line, so Casey was safe. But for how long? Casey spent a good half hour looking around for the lost deed, but with no luck. It was now 12:30 in the morning, and everywhere was pitch black. Casey decided to take a break for a while and headed back to Lady Grange, where he left her on a siding. As he warmed himself in his cab, he suddenly heard a rustling sound from nearby, and looked up to see what it was. A tramp was walking down the road towards the coast. Now, tramps sometimes take things that don't belong to them, or trick folk into giving them something. Maybe this one may have taken the deed. Excuse me, mate, Casey called out. The tramp stopped and turned to Casey. Can I ask you something? Casey asked, to which the tramp nodded and walked over. What assistance can I give, kind sir? He said, tipping his hat before Casey. You haven't seen a deed along your travels, have you, by any chance? Asked Casey. They're hard to come by, sir. I try to do a good deed for someone, but they refuse to accept it. No. I mean like a deed to a house or a railway. Ah, I see. The tramp chortled. "No, sorry." Casey sighed. "Oh, well, thanks anyway." And he turned to go. "Hold on a moment," the tramp quickly said. "You're part of that railway, aren't you?" Yes. Why?" Casey replied. "I'm just wondering, why aren't you with your colleagues? They're all kidnapped, you know." "Kidnapped?" "Yes. They're all carried away to that garage place outside your railway by folks with some serious eye infections." The tramp took out a homemade pipe and puffed a few clouds of smoke. "We never stood for any of that in my younger days," he murmured. "But then, that was then, but not now." "Stephen," Casey said quietly, "he's brainwashed the whole MCS and he's already attacked the railway. I can't go back on the line. They're bound to see me for sure." "Well, you could disguise yourself," the tramp suggested. "I would lend you some of my clothes, but property is sacred, you know." Good idea. There's no moon tonight, so I must wear something dark. "Thanks, mate," he called as he headed back to Lady Grange. "Consider your quest for a good deed concluded." "Oh, thank you, sir," the tramp called back. Good luck, old boy," he murmured as he continued on his long journey. "You could use a shower by the looks of him." "How are you all settling in?" Stephen smiled as he looked at his prisoners. Bernard, Cars, Corpse, Jane and Whitehouse stared back at him as they tried to free themselves from being chained to the wall. "Don't get too comfortable now. I have plans for you as soon as the rest of your colleagues arrive tomorrow morning." "If I was still chairman, I would have you kicked out," threatened Cars. "Oh yes, you would," Stephen replied. "Only, I don't think the new chairman would like that very much. After all, he's the one who owns the deed, isn't he?" And with that, he presented a piece of paper before them all. "The deed? But how did you find it?" Cars gasped. "Didn't the chairman tell you to keep it somewhere safe before he left?" Whitehouse asked. "You did hide it somewhere, didn't you?" Cars thought hard about it. "Oh, I knew there was something I was meant to do," he muttered quietly. "And I thought Grinder and Gears were idiots," Bernard groaned. "Anyway," Jane burst out, "you've only got the four of us here. Looks like your boys missed one." Stephen chortled as he walked up to Jane. "Don't worry your little heart on it," he said, stroking Jane's long hair. She resented. "I will find him and make him suffer like you lot will." But then again, he paused and looked deep into Jane's eyes. "I could always use a queen to rule next to me." There was a thud and a gasping squeak as Stephen fell to the ground. "Okay," he squeaked. "Maybe I don't need a queen after all. You can suffer the fate of your friends as well." He stood up again and recovered. "And then, once everyone in this land is brainwashed, I can rule everything, and then everything will belong to me. Me, you hear?" "Don't forget about me, Stephen." The ghostly spirit appeared next to Stephen. "It's mainly my bidding as well as yours, you know." "Oh yes, great-grandfather, my apologies," Stephen quickly corrected. "No offence taken, but be warned. Even in death, there are ways I can make people suffer." "And just how can you do that?" Corpse questioned. "It's not even possible." "Just you wait," hissed the spirit. It turned back to Stephen. "There's something I need you to do," it informed him. "As you wish, great-grandfather. I'll deal with you lot later, so make the most of what time you have left." Casey had soon got a good disguise to blend in with the other workers of the MCS. He got hold of an old pair of overalls and dirtied them up with motor oil. "Right, hopefully this should fool them," he thought to himself. "If I fail, that's it for everyone, including the railway, so I'd better be careful." He left Lady Grange in an empty siding and walked over to the MCS. Again, all the workers were gathered in the courtyard, while Stephen and the spirit stood outside the shed. "Now then," Stephen began, "we are all aware that there is still one railway pest wandering the grounds, but no matter, for you lot will be armed with these firearms." Casey looked at the weapons from his tree. They looked very similar to paintball guns, but with glowing fragments of the jewel in each one of the containers. Just one hit from one of these, and he'll be completely under the power of the jewel. Now, the only problem we face is where to find this little pest. It's not as if he could fall from the sky now, is it? It was at that very moment an owl landed on the branch next to Casey. It turned round and saw Casey, spread its wings wide and gave a loud screech. Casey jumped in shock. The branch he was sitting on broke and he fell out of the tree and onto the gravel in the courtyard. Everyone turned and stared at him. "Oh, sorry about that," Casey said as he got to his feet. "This isn't the Top Gear studio by any chance?" "Casey, I've got you just where I wanted you," Stephen jumped and grabbed one of the guns. All the others moved in. "As you were," Stephen ordered. "He's mine to deal with." Casey dived towards Bernard's Rolls Royce as Stephen fired numerous shots. "So much for the disguise. Now what did I do?" Casey said to himself. He was just about to give in when Stephen stopped firing. Surely after those shots, he'd be more brainwashed than a 5-year-old watching the Teletubbies. "Guards, move in!" Grinder and Gears moved in towards the car. Casey began to panic. There was only one idea left in his head, but it was too risky and too stupid to use. But at times like this, anything was possible. Slowly, Casey stood up and faced Stephen. "All hail Master Stephen," Casey said, trying hard to sound like the others. Stephen lowered his gun and smiled. "Well, that was easy enough. Grinder, call off the search for Casey and tell the men to prepare themselves for the takeover."
I obey,
Grinder replied and went to his duties. Stephen circled around Casey, looking at his disguise. "I've seen worse," he admitted, "but it takes more than an oil-stained pair of overalls to get the better of me, Casey. Now, what should I do with you?" He then had an idea. "Casey, here are my orders. You are in charge of guarding the impound cage. Make sure none of the prisoners escape." "I obey," Casey replied, and marched towards the cages. Stephen smiled as he sat back down in his chair. "I don't think it was wise sending him down there," the spirit said. "There's something about him that stands out from the others. Maybe it's because he's the first railway folk to get brainwashed. Don't worry yourself. I've got everything under control," reassured Stephen. Deep in the impound cage, the others were all wondering if Casey was all right. All except Bernard. "Oh, I hope he's okay," Jane said worryingly. "I'm sure Casey's fine," reassured Corpse. "He may have hidden away from the troops and taken shelter somewhere." "More likely he's been caught and brainwashed like the others," muttered Whitehouse, who was trying to get some sleep. "Don't say things like that," snapped Jane crossly. "Casey may be the youngest out of us and may not be the smartest, but at least he would know how to deal with situations like this."
Silence in there!
Yelled the guard on duty.
Prisoners should only speak when spoken to.
All right, don't get your prop shaft in a twist," Cars called back. "We're not all petrol heads like you lot."
If you don't shut in there, I'll make you quit.
The guard threatened. "What's going on in here?" a voice called from nearby. They all looked and saw Casey standing at the doorway. His face showed little sign of emotion. He walked slowly up to the cage.
Who are you?
Questioned the guard. "I'm to cover for you, master's orders," answered Casey in his brainwashed voice. He waited to see what the response would be.
Very well, but watch that one there.
The guard pointed at Cars.
He's a troublemaker, him.
"You're the one who's causing trouble around here," Cars yelled back, but the guard took no notice as he marched out of the room. Jane walked over as far as the chains would let her towards Casey, who had his back to them. "Stephen got you after all, Casey," she said quietly. Casey looked around, making sure no one was watching, before turning quickly towards them. "Not likely," he said cheerfully. "Case! How the hell did you get in here?" "Does Stephen know?" asked Cars. "Yes, but he thinks I'm brainwashed like the others, so don't let on." "Right, where are the keys, and I'll see about getting you lot out of here." There, on the wall by the door," putted Corpse. As Casey reached for the keys, he noticed the club's portable tracks were laid out on the floor. They seemed to be leading back to the railway, with a set of points leading towards the courtyards above them. "Why are they here?" he thought to himself. "Keys! The keys!" Cars whispered, trying to get Casey's attention. "Sorry, I was checking in case anyone was about. Now, which key is it?" "Everything all right, Casey?" a voice called out. Casey jumped and stuffed the keys into his pocket as Stephen entered the room. "Ah, I see you noticed the rails there. I'll discuss about that later on. In the meantime, I've been thinking." He paused for a few seconds. Casey bit his lip. "I've been thinking that it might be a good idea to make you my second in command." Casey desperately tried to hold back the words "no," but forced out, "It would be an honor, master." "Good," smiled Stephen. He turned to the others. "You hear that, you lot?" he yelled, striking the cage with Bernard's cane. "If anyone of you tries to escape, you'll have to go through your friend." Whitehouse laughed. "That wouldn't be a problem," he said. "Casey couldn't even swing a punch." "Is that so?" Stephen said. "Casey, prove him wrong, will you?" Casey opened the cage and walked up to Whitehouse. They looked at each other menacingly. Very quickly, he struck Whitehouse in the liver, causing him to collapse to the ground. Whitehouse winced in pain. The others watched on speechless, as Casey then started to kick Whitehouse repeatedly. "All right, that'll do, Casey," Stephen said once he was satisfied. "Any more brave comments?" The others glared at him and remained silent. "Didn't think so." "Come, Casey, we've work to do." "I obey," replied Casey, and walked after him. After closing the cage, he looked back to the others and winked. Then he followed Stephen back to the courtyards. Everyone gathered round Whitehouse to see if he was all right. As soon as the door slammed shut, he sprang to his feet. "Well, that seemed to work out a treat," he said cheerfully. The others stared.
You mean you weren't hurt?
Bernard said. "A punch like that would have put you out of commission at once," said Cars. "Oh, ye of little faith," smiled Whitehouse. "Surely you know me and Casey were acting. Managed to fool Stephen, too." But why?" asked Jane. Corpse smiled. "You crafty devils," he said, as Whitehouse pulled out a set of keys from his pocket. "That's one way of getting the keys." "Right," said Whitehouse, trying to look for the right key. "Just give me a few moments here, and we'll be out of here in no time." "I'll take those first," Bernard burst out, and grabbed the keys from Whitehouse. In the struggle, the ring holding the keys snapped, and the keys fell through the railings of a water drain on the ground.
Oh, brilliant!
Cars said angrily. "Our only chance of escaping, Bernard, and you've gone and ruined it in less than 10 seconds. It's no wonder we're enemies." "I just want to get out of here as much as you do," Bernard growled. "That's enough, you two," Jane interrupted. "We just need to hang tight and hope for the best that Casey can get us out of here. That is, if he can get us out."